Hey, everybody, welcome to the Real Birding Podcast, the show where we crack open the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm Caleb Putnam in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
We have got a really fun show today. I'm really excited. A guest that we are going to get into falconry and bird metabolism and maybe even poultry judging. There's a lot with this guest here. But first, we have got to cover our weekly bird quiz. Last week, we played for you the song of a pileated woodpecker, and Pete from Washington, D.C. got that correct. Thanks for participating, Pete. This week, we've got a new special bird, so I'm going to play this song. If you think you know what it is, tell us in the comments of this video, and you might get a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. All right, let's do it. A little quiet. Hopefully you can rewind and listen to that back if you need to, but otherwise, let's get into it. Like I said, our guest this week is a real fun one. She is a PhD candidate at Trent University. She is a falconer, and she is a birder, a lifelong birder from the great state of Michigan. We are proud to present to you Meg Heft.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Meg. Hey,
Meg.
Thanks for coming on.
Great to see you.
Meg, how did you get into birding?
I originally started with a bit more of the domestic side in the sense of poultry. So originally I started showing chickens, really getting into identification, learning key characteristics and the standard for how you show poultry. And it kind of translated over to understanding key features and field marks for wild birds too. So yeah.
What types of poultry is this? I have to admit, I have no background in this stuff. What is an example of a poultry that you would show and who's interested?
So it can range from chickens to ducks, turkeys, geese, as well as some exotics. And the American Poultry Association oversees a number of different shows, and they have this standard of perfection where every bird is assigned a 100-point value, and it's broken down based on color, conformation, and other characteristics of the breed. So yeah, it's really interesting.
You grew up doing this as a kid, right?
Yeah. I used to show. I started showing when I was 10 or so, mostly chickens. Got into ducks for a bit, and kept going from there.
Everyone has a duck phase, am I right?
What are some of the breed names or the varieties of ducks or chickens or anything?
So it's broken into different classes. You have single comb, clean-legged. So you might have in that class, for example, just a rock variety. So you have like barred rocks. That's a variety of that breed. You have these other classes of rose comb, clean-legged. It just is broken down into a lot of different categories. But some that people might be familiar with would be a Wyandotte. You'll have Orpingtons. Those are your common egg layers you could get from Tractor Supply or Family Farm and Home. So if you're in Michigan and buying your poultry, I guess if your other viewers are out there, I don't know what they're going to. Yeah.
Well, I can honestly say that's one of the most unique ways I've ever heard about getting into the world of birding. But I love it. I love asking people how they get into birding because almost no story is the same. But usually it's something along the lines of, well, I started noticing these birds at my bird feeders. And I was like, what are those? But you like reverse engineered it. You became an expert in birds, but not wild birds, and then transitioned into the wild side. That's really fun.
It's kind of funny. Yeah. I never, I would notice wild birds as well, but I just didn't really recognize like all the details of observation that you can make there. So when I found out about that, I was like, wow, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, it also seems like it segues really nicely into birding because you're already familiar with the concept of like trying to tell them apart and what are the the aspects of their plumage and morphology. And so I can see how that would just like transition you right over. So how did the actual birding begin?
How did my birding begin from there? Well, yeah. I guess the one thing that didn't translate was with the Old English game, I'm trying to assign a value, but with you're talking about a worm-eating warbler, I wasn't really scoring that bird. So, but
They're all
yeah,
10s out of 10.
that's a 10 out of 10 Weewa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wawa weewa.
That's
But
great.
I think after that, I kind of got into it, just backyard birding, mostly at the feeders, and eventually started to get into some banding work. So I really enjoyed seeing them in hand because at the time I was still learning a lot of key features, and in the field I was struggling with IDs. So it was cool to go to a banding station and get to see some of those species in hand. Yeah.
So you got
And
to go
that's
to
really
a banding station earlier in your career, because it probably took me 10 or 15 years to even get to that. I had to, spend all the time learning them in the field. So that must have really kickstarted things.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, seeing them in hand, I think so many people connect. They really connect more when you get the chance to experience it up close for a lot of people. So it's a great education opportunity, that's for sure. Yeah.
was that with Rich and Brenda at the Nature Center?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, that's great. I remember going out as a little kid too and watching them band birds, and yeah, it's a pretty magical experience. It's always so striking how absolutely tiny a lot of the songbirds are.
Yeah, you really never quite grasp the scale when you're out in the field sometimes. I mean, I was surprised with, seeing the first crossbill in hand. I just never like the scale of it compared to what you think in the guide or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to totally concur that the impact that seeing a wild bird in the hand has on the public is really second to none. I don't think there's anything else you can do to really impact that person emotionally and connect them to the natural world that's better than that. And honestly wish there was a little bit more of this, you know, opportunities for the public to really engage in banding stations, because it tends to be pretty rare. But yeah, that's really, really awesome.
And holding birds in your hand has become sort of like a staple of your flavor of birding, especially with the research that you're doing. It seems very hands-on with wild birds and with your falconry stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely got into it through that, but since then I see certain scenarios where it's good to do more passive monitoring when you can, but most of my research involves hands-on work. It's, I guess, the key there, like Caleb was saying, just really connecting it to a specific education or outreach focus, so that it's not just holding birds to hold birds, which I know some people really care about that, but it's good to have more intentionality to what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Do you keep
Go
a
ahead,
bird
Rob.
in
Sorry.
hand life list?
Oh, a band list or a banding tick list. I used to. I stopped at one point because for me it's more of the takeaway from that specific bird and what the research is contributing to rather than the species. But yeah, I know a couple banders around here that have lists over 1,000 or so, which
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah, you'd have to hit multiple continents to approach anything like that. That's crazy.
That's
Oh yeah.
wild.
So, tell us about falconry. I've actually never directly been involved with it. It's always been something that's kind of out there, but I have never been able to be specifically involved with it. And I have to admit a lot of ignorance on this. I even struggle with like, I'm not questioning it, but I don't understand the purpose of it, or what it is that motivates people to get into it and to do it. Is it, for example, is it the heritage? Because I know this stuff goes back to the olden days. The Middle East and China have been doing this stuff for eons. Is it the fact that you want to use the bird to actually generate food for yourself? What are the components that motivated you, and what was your entry point?
Yeah, so it was a combination of a bit of both, in which there's an aspect of animal behavior and training, which I really enjoy. I used to work at Kalamazoo Nature Center training birds of prey. And I realized there were certain aspects of training that you really can't develop when you work at an education center where you have this really close relationship to the bird. And recognizing subtleties to behavior and actually understanding how to bring about certain behaviors and shape behaviors in a way that's effective. And with falconry, it really gives a intentionality to it where you're going out and hunting with this bird and you're actively in this sort of partnership working together in a field, which I got to follow a couple falconers in the past. And I really loved the experience seeing them in the field, seeing them work the field, seeing their bird responding to what they were doing. I was like, got to do that someday. I just never planned on it happening at this point in the middle of my PhD. But when the opportunity presents itself, hard to pass up.
Neat. So you received a permit for this, I imagine?
Yeah, so I started out as an apprentice. Apprenticeships take about 2 years, so I actually just got onto my general license. So I completed the apprenticeship training where you fly a bird for a certain number of seasons. You have to, in certain states, you have to take an exam to even get to that point. A lot of paperwork. You have to have a sponsor who's willing to take you on and teach you. And all of that has to line up. And then on top of it, you have to successfully trap a bird for the season. Or some people will hunt with captive bred birds, but I prefer the form of falconry in which you're hunting with a wild bird.
It's really interesting, and it also shows how you're a true bird lover in many different ways, because your research has nothing to do with raptors or falconry, but it's like all you do all day long is think about and study and train and work with birds. It's you're probably the most committed bird person I know. That's probably what I'd say.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess couldn't get enough of it with just the research side. Couldn't get enough with the other side of things.
So what does the process look like in training a wild bird to basically be your companion and do your bidding? How do you even start? Because every time I encounter a wild bird, if it's like an injured bird or something, they want nothing to do with me and they're trying so hard to get away, even if I'm trying to help them, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely a process, and it's mostly based on positive reinforcement. And to do that, you really use food as a primary motivator so that the bird is working with you and learning that you are a source of food to them. Or not you yourself, of course. We're not trying to do that.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But you're tidbitting and providing food opportunities to the bird, and it takes the first bird that I trapped, it took about a month to get him going. But within the first week, he was eating off the glove. He was doing short jumps to the glove. And then eventually we start training to do free flights in which we take the bird out, practice on crayons line in which they're not able to fly away, but you still have some control and you can recall them and they'll come back to you most of the
It's
time.
amazing.
I should say my first season, the bird that I trapped, there was one night where I had to go back out and he spent the night out at a tree because he was a little bit too high in weight.
Here's a video jumping back in of this red-tailed hawk leaving your arm, presumably to go pursue a rodent or something. Is this your bird?
Yeah, this is my bird. This is Normal. He is now in his second year. I held on to him for 2 seasons. I'm flying him for one more season and then releasing him. But the nice part about falconry is that since you're actively hunting with that bird, it still is retaining those skills that it would have in the wild. So anecdotally, these birds are able to go back into the wild and survive. There's really not been many studies about survival of falconry birds once released, but I know a number of anecdotal stories in which people were able to observe that bird after release for a period of time, and they did well on their own.
Oh, that's
But
great.
That's amazing.
That's really interesting. Did they retain migratory behavior too, potentially?
that's something that's really interesting, and something that I've talked about with a friend of mine who tracks red-tailed hawks and works on the red-tailed hawk project. And we'd love to really someday get a transmitter on one of these birds and see where they go. It'd be really interesting to see if they go back to their initial migratory pattern, if they drift a bit. We don't know at this stage, so it'd be cool to.
Or if they just sit on your roof for like the next 5 years.
Some people after release, they will leave out food for that bird in that area if they know where the bird is. So you definitely the best condition you can. You fatten them up. They get a lot of exercise. You put them in, you release them at a time where there's more hunting opportunities. So.
Okay, I have another question. Do you eat the meat from what the animal catches, or does the bird eat it?
We both do. So when I dress out game, I'll usually take the leg myself, and it's just easy to quick process for dinner. And the rest I'll freeze and butcher out for the bird. So half the year we're spending in the hunting season, and the other half is the molt. So over the molt period, the bird is at a higher weight. At that high weight, they need that energy to be able to successfully molt. And when they're at the higher weight, they're not willing to be out in the field hunting. Plus, during the summer, it's hot anyways, so we don't really want to be out. So I just feed him everything that we caught during the season. And then during the actual season, I usually set aside some for myself and cook it. So
Cool. And what species is this now? This is like cottontails. I'm trying to think what other options that are in that size category. I assume that's the size category of red tails catching, right?
yeah, so I've caught mostly cottontail over the last couple seasons, but we also squirrel. So he does a good of going between the two styles of hunting, which it's cool to see because one behavior is more of a chase and the other is more strategy in terms of working a tree with a squirrel in it. Oftentimes the bird either can go up to the top and crash down for the squirrel, or they can go kind of fly over to another perch and then come back across and catch it off the tree as they go by. So it's cool to see different birds will have different strategies. And since my bird is a male, he's a bit smaller, harder to take squirrel. So when I see him hunting, it's a little bit different than when I've seen people who fly female red tails hunting.
Wow. Yeah,
Wow.
that's absolutely fascinating. I would assume too that you would learn a lot about how the species hunts. Whereas like if you're a bird watcher, the chances of you encountering it in that interaction is not great because you're probably going to scare the bird off of its perch, and you might even scare it off of the hunt because it's trying to get away from you. Whereas you get to sit here and witness exactly what these things are doing, day in and day out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy that part of it because I mean, you rarely get to see a full hunt, different ways that they approach problem solving in the field. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in terms of data, it's really like unique because oftentimes you don't really get to follow a single bird over multiple hunts and see what predicts hunting success. So there is something I'm doing on the side right now, which when I do have more results, I'd be happy to share. But I'm interested in some aspects of weather and the effects on hunting success. So I've been collecting a large data set for each hunt with this bird. So I'm hoping to see if that's any interest. Yeah.
Very cool. Does the bird ever escape or leave you or like refuse to come back or anything like that? Or does the bird ever get mad when you attempt to retrieve the prey or anything like this? Like, get away, this is mine, or anything like that?
Yeah, so in my first season, it was a big learning curve where I didn't really know what I was doing out in the fields at times. And oftentimes gulls and crows, they'll mob red tails. And I didn't know what problem that could be until I went down to a hunting site where, we were being mobbed by over 30 crow, gulls circling overhead, and he just took off. I eventually got him back. Have we have a recall system in which the bird knows to come back for food in cases where they drift off. But it was early on in training, so it was a bit of a challenge. And there has been one case where he did spend the night out and I had to go back for him.
Ooh.
Yeah. That was, again, an early experience, so I didn't really know what I was doing.
So what is your recall system?
So you usually train the bird that it responds. It's kind of like operant conditioning, the sound of a whistle, and then food is presented. So they know to come back to the whistle. And then just in terms of safeguards, we also have equipment. I can show you that if you'd like.
Yeah, let's see it.
Oh yeah.
So this is an upgrade from what I did last season. This is a GPS unit, Marshall. So the GPS is a tail mount. The spring will connect into a small, it's just a plectrum that's mounted to his tail. And so this will sit on his tail and it will send the GPS location to my phone. So it's just an app. But
Wow.
yeah, it's a step
And
up. Season we were hunting VHF and it was this older transmitter. You get the Yagi out and you couldn't find like a good signal. It would get a ton of noise and bounce back.
fascinating. And so that's not a solar powered type of thing. That's a one and done battery, and you just pull it off when you're done in the field.
So this battery just screws on, comes off. It'll last for, if the bird spent the night out, it can last up to 3 days if you put it on power saver mode, which you can do on your phone, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Go ahead, Will.
I was just thinking, I feel like falconry isn't even like on the radars of most birders, but now the more I'm thinking about this, I'm like, gosh, I got to get a red-tailed hawk. Are you kidding me? No, I think I'm like at the stage in the Dunning-Kruger effect where I feel like I could do it, but I have no idea what kind of commitment that is. Like most people get a dog and don't realize how much work the dog is going to be, but you got a red-tailed hawk and just figured the rest out. That is amazing.
Definitely one of those ones where you want to get out most days and fly the bird. But I mean, it's not hard to do. You do it because you want to do that. I'm sure if you end up with the time, that would definitely be an option someday.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have to ask one more question about falconry. What would be the most awesome species of raptor that you could obtain to do falconry with if you had free reign?
I'm hoping eventually to fly goshawk. I don't want to do a wild take because there's concern in terms of population, so I don't want to take one of those birds. But there's a lot of captive bred goshawk, and they really are they're very generalist in which you can switch over from one hunting system to another. So I'm mostly doing small game, rabbit, squirrel. Occasionally he catches other small mammals, but he really isn't built to take, waterfowl or so, but goshawk, they have that speed to them and they have the size. So, you can fly them on ducks. You can also fly them on small game. So they're a cool bird. I've seen the flight style is a little bit different too, where with the red tails, you'll put them up in a tree. You work your way through the field and the bird will follow along. With goshawk, you'll fly them most of the time off the glove. So you'll kind of work a patch. You'll either have dogs running for you, or it's harder to do it without dogs, but you'll fly the bird glove whenever the dogs flush something.
So I assume if you're hunting with a bird, do you need to have a hunting license and have to hunt in the particular season for whatever game you're hunting?
Yeah, so you have to have a small game license. Occasionally there's possibility for bycatch because you can't control exactly what the bird is going to decide to do. In that case, it's just a law where it's leave it lay. So you leave whatever they catch in the fields and don't take it. But yeah, the same seasons. Ours is slightly different. So our hunting season here in Canada runs from September until end of March. And it depends, I guess, for long wingers or I can't remember what duck season is for if you're flying falcons, but
interesting.
Yeah, so if the bird were to catch a Kirtland's warbler, you're not going to jail, basically.
I'm not taking that bird out of the field. If he catches it, I just leave it there. But I've never had him target small passerine, so
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that'd be a heartbreaker.
I always thought it would be really neat to have kites. I know they catch a lot of dragonflies and stuff, but just like the elegance and the beauty of swallow-tailed kite, and maybe even like an Eleanor's falcon. The largely insect and bird catching one from Europe and Madagascar. I don't even know if that's a possibility, but I don't know. That always has a special place in my heart. Those ones.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear if those are species that can be hunted there or not. But each state has different lists of birds that you can fly, and that's specific terms of wild take, birds that you trap out of the wild.
I want to transition just a little bit. I want to, if you're willing, talk about your research a little bit. It's something that I think a lot of casual birders, at least when I hear about the kind of research that you're doing, it's like a third language that I've never heard of before. So if you were explaining what you do in terms of bird research to somebody like me, how would you put it?
I'm focused on how human disturbances affect wild birds, especially breeding birds. And specifically, I'm interested in, there's single stressors where we can look at, the effect of sound pollution on behavior and physiology. But oftentimes, if you take an urban environment and break it down, you're going to see multiple stressors acting in conjunction with one another. So, you have a city, you'll have light, you'll have sound pollution, you'll have heat. So I'm taking only two aspects of that, but I'm interested in interactive effects between light and heat. And not just heat, but also other thermal challenges, like, we might see increasing extreme weather or fluctuations in temperatures, so cold snaps. I study a breeding population of tree swallows to answer these questions.
Very cool. What would the take-home conservation implications of that be for lay people, or just your average conservationist? Is there anything they can do, or like what type of action items would come of this work?
So my first chapter was on heat limitations, which essentially is that birds will limit their activity based on their risk of overheating. So, high temperatures, they start to reduce the amount that they're exercising, reduce the amount that they're provisioning to nestlings. So that affects success. So in that case, it's just it's being mindful of the effects of climate on birds. My other chapters are on interactions between light and temperature. So I haven't gotten through all of that data analysis, but just preliminary, it looks like there may be an effect of light on the ability to respond to cold temperatures.
So this is like nighttime light pollution escaping cities and like urban areas?
Yeah, so I use tree swallows because since they take to the artificial nest box system, I can manipulate the light level in the box. So small LED lights, and I dim them a bit so that they're about 1.8 lux, which is what you might find close to an urban area.
Mhm.
And then just they're powered by batteries. They turn on during the night, turn off during the morning, or turn off during the day. And I have these small tags that I use on birds, which will record any time that they're entering or exiting the nest box, along with core body temperature. So that gives me a sense of both the cycles of body temperature through the day and night, as well as how much the parents are coming in and out of the nest box. And that's just an index that we're using for how much they're exercising. But it's kind of exciting. We've got a new setup, which we're going to use these VHF tags and mount those on adults. They're just pretty much like a small backpack, and it'll show us how much the bird is flying around the field. So we can also have a measure of activity outside of the nest box too. So I'm interested in what it look like. Yeah.
Talk about a multifaceted approach. That is a lot of data.
Yeah, I was cleaning my data from this last chapter, and I think I have over 6 million individual observations because I've been using these tags on nestlings as well. So in the nest box, I'm measuring their body temperature, and I have a full 24-hour cycle. So it's logging every second in that box for 24 hours, which is a lot of data.
Oh my gosh.
Do you get time to go birding? I feel like you're not going to be able to fit it in very often.
Well, the nice thing is, like, my nest box site is out at the sewage lagoon, so I'm birding while I'm doing the work. Like, like I had a few good birds show up in the middle of that, and there's breeding bobolink outside in the fields nearby, and yeah, we had a couple good phalarope species show up, so I'm happy at that site. I get a chance to go birding still. Yeah. And it's along the drive from my field site to home is along the Otonabee River, so I get to stop along the way, do a little bit of birding there.
It sounds like you've got a little bit of everything, honestly. the stuff you're describing sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, just being able to be up close and personal with these animals, I get a little bit of envy from that, just because I really don't have that for the most part. Most of these field observations, the birds kind of out there, and then also being able to give back, and on the conservation side, which is another thing that is not always the easiest. Very fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds like, I know you've had some background in banding and stuff, though. Is
A
that
little bit, and actually, behind the scenes, you and I have been talking about banding a bit. I'm working toward a sub permit currently, but I'm just getting my feet wet. It's been a while since I've handled birds a lot, and it really is. It's wonderful. The goal with what I'm doing is to get a station going locally here in Michigan, hopefully later this year, where we can educate tens of thousands of people in the public who are not birders and not conservationists, and get them that hands-on experience, up close and personal, that hopefully will last a lifetime, and affect their conservation voting, their giving to organizations, their personal actions, whether it's, picking invasive species out of their local forests, or, contributing to other conservation projects in any other way. That's really how it all fits together for me.
And I'm sure, having outreach through like real birding media, you'll be able to kind of showcase some of that work as you're going along. It'll be cool to see any posts if you're up and running with the station, and I'm sure your viewers will appreciate that. Yeah.
There's bound to be a few posts, yes.
Yeah.
More than a few.
Before we sign off, guys, I was thinking maybe we could each go around and say one species of bird that we're looking forward to seeing the most now that migration is well underway. And I thought I'd start with mine, which is the Blackburnian warbler. It's my mom's favorite bird, I think, and so it became one of my favorite birds, and we haven't gotten them quite yet here in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, but I'm thinking in the next few days I'll probably get my first one.
Meg, you want to go second?
I'm trying to think. I guess last weekend I was out at Presqu'Île. It's this spot that's on Lake Ontario, and I always enjoy seeing the piping plover show up there, but it's a good spot to go. And outside of that, I was going to go see an upland sandpiper later today, so I'm looking forward to that.
Sweet.
That's a good one. I'm going to go with bay-breasted warbler. There's something that has always jumped out to me about the beauty of that bird. That color of orange in the flank area is unique. I don't see that on any other bird. And when they're here, the neotrops are here. It's like the sign that we are finally getting to the peak of migration, and boom, they appear. And I think we're probably about 2 weeks away from that here in Michigan. But it's coming. I mean, May is like right on us, guys. Like, it snuck up so fast this year,
Oh yeah.
Thrilled to get out this week.
Well, Meg, thank you so much for coming on. To the listeners, I hope you know that Meg is the real deal in terms of ornithology, birding, and falconry. And it's so rare to have somebody that has probably like the holy trinity of birds as they relate to humans. So it's just really cool to have you on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me out. It was fun chatting with you guys. You're always welcome to come up and join for a hunt sometime, and I've got a really good recipe for rabbit curry, so just coming out.
I will be taking you up on that offer.
You got to make a cookbook of all your best recipes from falconry.
I actually have one going. It's a lot of recipes to try out, but there's some good ones so far. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thanks everybody for watching. We are about 20 subscribers away from 300 subscribers on YouTube. So if you know anybody who would like to subscribe, make sure to send this video their way, and let's see if we can crack 300 subscribers on YouTube. That would be huge. Otherwise, happy birding, and thanks for watching.